Apparently being called out by the Mueller team wasn't enough. Appearing on the ironically named Reliable Sources show Sunday, one of the authors of the BuzzFeed piece tripled down.
I have further confirmation that this is right. We're being told to stand our ground. This is our reporting is going to be borne out to be accurate, and we're 100% behind it.
What if the sources are just wrong?
They're not.
Not intentionally.
They're
not trying to hurt you, but just what if they're wrong?
You know, they're not. They're not. I'm confident.
Some follow-up there. Here now exclusively, and his very first appearance on the Ingram Angle is Donald Trump Jr. Don, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Good to be with you.
When this story first came out, reporters were quick to pounce, quick to turn the spotlight on you.
Well, they always are, Laura, and this isn't the first time that happened. You saw it right after I did my testimony, and they said, oh, Donald Trump Jr. had the WikiLeaks information because presumably Adam Schiff leaked it right after my testimony to them and conveniently took out the 1 before the 4, turning the 14th into the 4th, meaning I had it 6 days instead, before the world saw it, as opposed to 4 days after the entire world saw it. This has gone on time and time again. It also happened when Lanny Davis said something along the effect of, I told my father about the Russia meeting and he was there. He was CNN's source. He then walked it back and realized it was totally wrong. Their own source did it, and yet today they still haven't pulled that back. And the reason is they need it to be true, Laura. They've been pushing this nonsense for 2 years. They've found nothing, but anytime there's a negative, anytime there's a chance to get Trump, they're going to jump on it. They're basically leftists policing leftists at this point. I love watching some of the CNN commentary. Well, this is going to give us all a bet. Of course it is, because you jump on it each and every time. They cover themselves with the, well, if true, well,
no,
if you're not sure it's true, don't push it for 14 hours
But you
straight.
have to see at 2 p.m. on Friday, Don, this is what they were going with at CNN.
What about the family here? I mean, when you read this BuzzFeed piece, it's Ivanka Trump and Don Jr. who are implicated. Don Jr. testified to Congress in September of 17, saying he was, quote unquote, his words, peripherally aware of it. Afterwards, Democrats Chris Coons and Jackie Spears said it is possible that he lied. How much jeopardy could these family members be?
Well, I think that's what we have to wait and see what happens. And if family members of Trump are going to be implicated, that could be a reason for him to resign and try to work out a deal to save his family.
Don, they were going right to impeachment, then to resignation, and then...
I mean, they got him this time, Laura, like the other 75 times, because they haven't exactly panned out. By the way, no different than the story you covered at the beginning, right? You had some Catholic schoolboys that were at a Right to Life march, okay? They were wearing a MAGA hat. They had to pounce because the media wants that to be true. They want a bunch of nice Catholic kids happen to be white. They want them to be the enemy. This is what they've created. The media has done this to themselves. They have shot themselves in the foot time and time again because they so desperately want this to be the truth, as opposed to saying, you know what? Trump's done a darn good job as president. If you look at any economic metric today, Laura, we are substantially better off than we were 2 short years ago before he took office, because he's doing a great job. Imagine what he could do without the noise, without the, every day there's a new reason for impeachment. Let him do his job. That's the job he was elected to do. And the media right now is really trying to subvert this democracy. They've done more to hurt the credibility of this country's institution as a democracy than anything in history.
Not only the president, but anyone who supports the president. Doesn't matter if you're 14 or you're my age or if you've so
God forbid you wear a MAGA hat, Laura, because that must make you all sorts of things. I mean,
Donnie, the issue with this Trump Tower thing keeps coming back, keeps coming back, and we know the BuzzFeed feed deal, and they claim they have it's all sourced and everything.
Of course it is.
When you've had time to think about this, you testified. When was the last discussion about this Trump Tower deal? Because Rudy got everybody really confused, I have to say. And I love Rudy. He hasn't been on the show in a while. We love him. But he goes on Meet the Press, and he says, well, it could have been like right through the election. Then he said he was talking in hypothetical terms today.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't talk about things that I don't know about. But, unfortunately, that sometimes happens, no different than anyone else. But the reality is this wasn't a deal. We don't know the developer. We don't know the site. We don't know anything about it. Ultimately, it was Michael Cohen essentially trying to get a deal done. You know, he was there for a long time. He wasn't exactly a deal guy. Didn't bring too many to the table, so I don't think anyone took it all that seriously. That's the reality of what went on. But, you know, it's that constant link. Now we got him. You saw the story last week. You know, Donald Trump is a Russian agent. Yeah. The guy that's a billionaire, leading in a pretty incredible lifestyle, he left all of that to go into this snake pit, to go into the swamp, to run against 16, 17 Republican contenders. He's got zero chance of doing that. To then defeat Hillary Clinton, he had zero chance of doing that. You know, he did all this because he's a Russian agent. I mean, the reason the media has no credibility is because this is what they do. This is what they do to themselves each and every time.
Adam Schiff, who has the ability now to call witnesses,
of course he does. Sure.
Is said he isn't going to stop. BuzzFeed report, no BuzzFeed report. And I want to play something for you and get your reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still going to investigate the claims?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Congress has a fundamental interest in two things. First, in getting to the bottom of why a witness came before us and lied. Mm-hmm. And who else was knowledgeable that this was a lie.
Even though it's been debunked, Don, he's going to proceed. I imagine he's going to call you back.
Yeah, he's got the reality. He's got nothing else. There's a 99.9% chance he's the guy that was leaking my testimony as I was testifying. I came out of testimony at about 8 o'clock at night looking, and CNN is running quotes from noon on about my testimony, you know, in the House Intelligence Committee. I mean, that has to say something about what's going on in there. Since he's never met a camera he didn't love, I would bet a lot of money that it was him. And the reality is, I've done 25 hours of testimony on a 20-minute meeting. This has been the greatest witch hunt in American history, perhaps world history. In 3 hours, they found the bomber that was the fake bomber. And in 2 years, they haven't found anything other than they got a big bombshell. Oh, they got Trump this time. I've heard it too many times, Laura. The American people don't take this stuff seriously anymore. They look at these people like jokers at this point.
Kamala Harris was out there today. You know, she announced that she's going to run for president. Let's listen.
The path is going to be about talking to people who are right now aware that this economy is not working for working people. It's going to be about talking with people about the fact that right now we have an administration that has waged a full-on assault on American values and American ideals.
Now, Don, when you hear a sitting senator say an assault on American values and American ideals, your dad's called a racist. I've known him for 20 years. I'm sorry. I've never
Laura,
heard him say
the insanity is there. You saw this with the social media platforms attacking the word family because, God forbid, you have family, right? You know, this is this leftist assault. When you talk about this economy not working for the American working class, I mean, Donald Trump's the first president to speak to the American worker in generations at this point. He's the guy delivering it. As I said earlier, there's not a single economic metric where we are not better off as a country today than we were 2 years ago under Barack Obama.
Don,
but with the media carrying the Democrats' baggage, they'll say whatever they want. They should be paid as lobbyists of the DNC at this point.
Are you now still thinking politics in the future? I mean, it's been thought that you were going to go into politics at some point.
Listen, I haven't thought about it that way. For me, it's about, you know, right now, whatever I can do to help my father win, I'm going to do because I love what's going on. As an American, as a patriot, as a father of 5 young children, I see what he's doing, what he's fighting, and the nonsense barrage that he's taking from the insanity that has become the left. Let's not kid ourselves. This is not your grandfather's Democratic Party. They've really lost their way. They have no interest in protecting Americans, only pushing and furthering their insane agenda. And I'm going to do what I can to help him. Whatever happens in the future, I'll deal with that then. But in the meantime, he's making it pretty easy, given what he's doing, because he's doing a phenomenal job for this country.
2020 is coming already. They're all lining up. Don, thanks so much. Don't be a stranger. Thanks for coming on.
I'll be back.
Something that's gotten a lot of traction over the last 6 weeks is the government shutdown. Of course, last week, as you know, Nancy Pelosi said, look, I'm not negotiating with Donald Trump until he opens the government. Last Friday, he reopened the government. Now, the signals are, and Nancy Pelosi very clear yesterday, she said there's no wall money in the deal. And yesterday, the president had heard these comments, and he said this in the Oval Office.
I don't think they're going to make a deal. I see what's happening. They're all saying, oh, let's do this, but we're not giving one dime for the wall. That's okay. But if they're not going to give money for the wall, it's not going to work. And if it's not going to work, then the politicians are really wasting a lot of time. We're allowing people to come into this country and sell drugs and human traffic and do all of these horrible things. That if we had the simplicity of a well-constructed, beautiful barrier or wall, they wouldn't be able to come into our country.
And Geraldo, you have said on this program, give the president the money for his wall.
Well, I think that not to give the president, just on principle, just digging your heels in and saying you're not getting a dime to replace, to repair, or God forbid to expand the over 600 miles of fencing and barrier and wall that already exists is pure spite on Nancy Pelosi's part. And I think the president is probably right. She's digging in her heels, not saying a single dollar for a wall, giving the president really no chance. It's not a negotiation. In other words, in a negotiation, you sit, you have a compromise, it's painful. Okay, I'll give you 50 miles of wall if you give me the amnesty for the dreamers and a ticket to citizen. You know, you make a negotiation. It's difficult on both sides because you have to give up something you don't want to. But it just seems to me that she is dooming any potential negotiations right from the get-go, making much more likely that in mid-February the president will declare a national emergency because he's hell-bent on getting a barrier, getting a wall, getting some more of the division between our neighbors to the south, you know, in physical form.
Why do you think he tweeted out? He said, let's just call this them walls from now on and stop playing political games. A wall is a wall. So remember he said at first, okay, we'll call it a barrier, whatever you want to call it. Now he's saying no.
And then he was going to put solar panels on top of it and, you know, cool drinks with umbrellas and all the rest of it. I think that what the president has discovered, much to his chagrin, instantly I think that Governor Christie was right that the president went into the first shutdown without a clear idea of how he was going to get out of the back end of it. And now it's even worse because now Nancy Pelosi is telegraphing out front that no matter how these negotiations go, not a dime for the wall, no matter what. So I believe that what's happened is he sees he's not going to win in a negotiation, so he's going to go ahead. I think that's a signal, a clear signal, and as I said, that the president will declare a national emergency, use money from the Department of Defense or some other federal agency, Homeland Security, wherever the money exists, maybe FEMA, to start construction. I think in a way it's a face-saving for the president. He must get some new wall out of it. Just as it is face-saving for Nancy Pelosi, she cannot allow a single foot of wall to be constructed. This is a sorry way to run a government.
Yeah, and Geraldo, as that political debate plays out, what's actually happening at our southern border, you look at what happened in Arizona, Border Patrol, just the last 24 hours or so, confiscating enough fentanyl to kill 57 million people in this country. How can Democrats continue to say this is a manufactured crisis when something like that factually happens at the border?
Well, they would say, you know, I know Nogales very well. I'm a U of A grad. We used to go to Nogales, Mexico every Friday night. Now, no more. Now there's a lot more trepidation, a lot fewer social calls, casual calls across the border. The Democrats would argue that the fentanyl came in a produce truck, as most drugs do, you know, through a port of entry, and that the wall would not have stopped it. To that, I reply: let's take Nancy Pelosi at her word. Let's enormously enhance the ports of entry. Well, I would make a humanitarian argument, a democratic argument for a wall. You hear the stories of these children dying in the desert trying to get across, desperate because they can't get through ports of entry, where they found 4,000 bodies over the last year, people trying to make it across. I once tried. I made it with a group of undocumented migrants. We walked 45 miles. Many of them were at the end of their line by the time we made it across. Yes, Andy.
Well, the president has suggested he wants to beef up the ports and do something about a wall as well. So let's see what happens. But right now, it looks like the president is not going to get what he wants. Geraldo, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.